Welcome to the Middle East Teaching and Learning Conference. Today we'll be discussing the education pandemic. Is there a cure? Is it time to stop taking risks? My name is Stephen Cox and I'm the Chief Education Officer at New Nordic School, where I'm based in Dubai. I've been living in the Middle East for the last 13 years and I've worked in a variety of different roles at a senior board level. I've worked in all aspects of school improvement, change management, professional development, future of learning. More recently, I started to gain an interest in Finnish education after working with the Finnish government, who asked me to design a K-12 to bring to the region. I've been lucky enough for the last year to be working with New Nordic School as the Chief Education Officer, where my role is to develop the education vision and strategy in terms of transforming education in the future. More about that later. My previous experience actually is working in the healthcare industry, and that's where I got the idea for an article I wrote recently, and that's where I got the title for this presentation. I've been really proud of my former colleagues working in the NHS back in the UK and also healthcare colleagues around the world. It's left me feeling quite humbled in terms of them putting themselves at the front line and really doing a fantastic job to keep everybody well and hopefully over the hurdle of this challenge that we're facing at the moment. I also think that it's given me the idea to focus on my own profession now, which is education. And as I said, I want to talk about in this presentation what I feel is the education pandemic and whether we can find a cure for that and whether it's time to stop taking risks or not. As we know, we're all facing new challenges at the moment, and education's faced its new challenges by the closing of schools and the advent of online learning. I think the education community has responded tremendously well during this time. There's been endless amounts of free resources and expertise offered to schools from both companies and educators. However, I think sometimes it's felt quite overwhelming with this choice, which has left educators, parents and schools not knowing which way to turn for the best, as there is an overwhelming amount of resources and free offerings. I think as well that during this time we've had to focus on a different set of skills. We've really had to look at our ability to communicate more effectively, to collaborate more by remote working, and to deal with this uncertainty of work. I think that's led us to become more focused on skills. So those skills of grit, perseverance, resilience and leadership have really come out to the forefront. And I think it's those skills that we really should try to focus on more in education, rather than our kind of classic approach and current education system of focusing on subject and subject knowledge. We're also all having to look at our own emotional well-being and the emotional well-being of others as we enter this uncertain future. And that should be at the core of what everybody's focus should be as well. So we're all having to get used to this term of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think the first thing to say on that is that resistance to change is a natural human reaction. If we were at a conference now and we had a coffee break, you'd go and have your coffee, you'd come back and you'd probably sit in the same seat again. We don't like change. People don't like change. And that's okay. Some teachers also argue in terms of technology that it's not for them. And who can blame them when it fails all the time, or it doesn't work, or there's a problem with it? There's no confidence there, is there? I think that if we can't see technology as time-saving, it creates another problem. It doesn't solve a problem. The other thing as well is that teaching itself is very ordered and it's very structured, whereas learning is very messy. Sometimes I think teachers feel uncomfortable in this environment and they need to be in control. So how comfortable of being uncomfortable are you? What types of people have been doing this better, have been comfortable in this environment? In my experience, it's those people who are more full of optimism and those people with a positive attitude. And again, coming back to the point of emotional well-being, those people with a strong emotional well-being seem to deal with this change more effectively. So if we can all focus on those areas and help other people to focus on those areas through our education system, I think we're going to be better human beings in the future. So let me explain about the education pandemic and what I mean by that. We're going through unprecedented times. Certainly in my lifetime, I've never experienced anything like this before with the COVID-19 crisis. And it's had terrible outcomes with the virus. I'm not trying to compare that situation with our education system, rather than just use it as a metaphor, because there's some similarities of what I want to talk about when dealing with our global education environment at this moment in time. Let's take the COVID-19 virus itself, which is causing this pandemic. This equates to our outdated education system across the world, which are not meeting the needs of young people. This is where our education pandemic lies. We're now trying to find a cure with a vaccine, and in the meantime, we're adopting these preventative measures and treatments to slow down the spread of the disease and the devastating effects of it. With our broken education system, it's not too dissimilar. Our broken education system, our virus. We're trying to find treatments or preventative measures to stop it from spreading. If we don't do that, it's going to lead to poor learning outcomes if it's left untreated. Now, I've had the pleasure and privilege of working in good and outstanding schools with some fantastic educators in this country and internationally. And I think Finland is a good example of this as well in terms of what they are doing. And they seem to have taken these kind of treatments and preventative measures and they've put them in place. And they've led to really excellent outcomes for young people. However, it's not curing the underlying problem of this virus, our education pandemic, of our education system. And I think it's also leads to this less personalised education, which is leading to many students not reaching their potential. So consequently, many students are developing these learning disorders, or they lack purpose, or they get bored, and they don't go on to thrive. As I mentioned before, I come from a medical background, and I've kind of given this term of this deficiency of learning a term called learningpenia, the deficiency of learning. And I think that exists in education. So just like COVID-19, those countries and governments and schools or institutions who have dedicated educators that have developed the best preventative measures and treatments have had better outcomes. So we see a mixed picture of the pandemic of education across the world and in its communities. We live in a very uncertain world, and I think this video highlights some of those aspects. So, as that video demonstrated, we live in a very uncertain future in terms of our world. So how do we develop a future-ready education system? Are our schools ready for change? Are you ready for change? Let me tell you a little bit about what I'm doing and what I'm working on with the team that I work with. So New Nordic School empowers children really to become creative in terms of what their passion and what drives their passion. Let me explain a little bit more. New Nordic School is an education system. We are developing a pre-K to 12 system that applies the renowned Finnish curriculum, which is integrated with best pedagogical practices from around the world to give a personalised, purpose-based and locally relevant system. So our system's brought to new schools, but also to existing schools. And it really is about empowering students to explore their own natural creativity and shape their own future. Our learning philosophy is based around these areas. As mentioned, it's about aligning the Finnish curriculum with globally renowned systems. It's about personalising learning to allow students to learn at their individual level. It's about planning for an uncertain future, putting in a lot of competency-based approaches to learning, being fully interdisciplinary in its approach, because that's how the workplace and life operates. Putting in purposeful learning by using our sustainability development goals, and really providing a full K-12 curriculum called the Nordic Baccalaureate Curriculum, which is future ready now. So our curriculum operates using, as I say, Finnish at the core, but we've mapped out other curriculum as well, such as UK National Curriculum and US Common Core Curriculum. And now we're in the process of even mapping out French Baccalaureate Curriculum with a project in Paris. So it's very adaptable and flexible according to wherever we need to go internationally. What's different about it really is our innovative pedagogy. So we deliver and bring the curriculum to alive in the classroom through interdisciplinary quests. And that brings real purpose to learning through our UN Sustainable Development Goals. I think traditional education models sort of teach and assess subject content in isolation, which prepare students for standardised tests. So our interdisciplinary model blends subjects and creates connections and brings real relevance to learning. So our model is a three-layered kind of approach around our core competencies. So these skills earlier that I was talking to you about, of grit, perseverance, resilience, leadership, a real focus on those with traditional subject content, and then given purpose through our sustainability development goals. So students actually solve real life problems. Well, they don't actually solve them, because it's really difficult to solve sustainability and poverty, isn't it? They actually learn how to learn, trying to solve something that gives real purpose to their learning. And we feel that that's a real unique difference to our Future Ready curriculum. We offer the following services to existing and new schools around the world. We have our educational system, we have professional development, we also deliver self-evaluation and school development to schools. We focus a lot on the learning environment. We're also able to govern and operate and market schools as well. We have a license model. We can put more resources in and manage schools, and we offer separate consulting services. We're also due to launch our fully hybrid school in 2021, and also are launching some online courses come this September. So our underlying vision is to transform education around the world. We feel that current education systems are not working, and it's time for change. And what about the role of technology in this? I want to discuss briefly what we are developing at New Nordic School, and then finally link that back to the education pandemic metaphor I was referring and discussing earlier in my presentation. Recently I wrote an article, and I wrote the following: if we want technology to truly benefit the learning process, we must design it to work for a new way of learning in partnership with teachers and students. Teachers' role in the future is going to change. AI isn't going to replace teachers. Teachers are going to become much more activators of learning and work in partnership with both student and technology. Hybrid schools will become the future, we can save half the costs in money in building a hybrid school by having 50% of the students attend and 50% of the students not being there. I think we're heading into that kind of era. New Nordic School is developing a smart learning platform, and we're trying to solve three main problems in education. The first problem is the lesson planning and the burden of lesson planning in a lot of cases for teachers. So we are creating three tools really: an assessment tool, a lesson planning tool, and doing this through a resource library. We also want to really personalise professional development by developing an intelligent online platform that really offers relevant, personalised professional development for leaders and teachers. Finally, we want to personalise the student learning, and I think a lot of EdTech companies are already in this space. We want to develop this as part of our overall educational system. So we have a total system and structure in place, and not just an app or something that's going to cause initiative overload for schools. In phase one then, we're developing our Educators platform. And our Educators platform, as I said, will focus on the assessment and self-evaluation tools. It will focus on lesson planning tools that basically are able to group and personalise content for teachers then to deliver to students. It will offer an online learning platform for teachers and leaders. And there'll be this resource library and curriculum bank that we'll draw upon from open education resources, which we've already collated. The second phase of our platform really adds the personalisation. So it adds the machine learning systems, because we'll have the data at that point to collect that, to then push that back and recommend and personalise the actual learning journey and lesson planning tools and assessment tools for educators in our platform. We'll also bring on board much more licensed content with third-party providers. The final part of our learning platform is the personalisation of students. So we'll develop the student learning platform, direct interaction between student and technology in a personalised machine learning system that actually develops also online portfolios of evidence, which we hope one day will replace traditional examination structures. So that's the development of our technology journey, just to give you a sense of where we're heading as part of an overall education system for New Nordic School. By doing that, we feel that we're able to offer affordable, quality and truly scalable hybrid education internationally, and really try to address the current challenges now and have a future-ready curriculum to be able to deliver that through. So what's next for education? Going back to our education pandemic and the title of my presentation. Is it time to stop taking risks? Of course, when it comes to COVID-19, yes, for our safety and well-being, let's listen to the science and the medical profession and what we're told to do. In terms of education, no, I think it's certainly not time to stop taking risks. I think that we should be taking risks more and more in education now. I think we should be encouraging this risk taking and much more purposeful learning inside and outside the classroom. Schools, teachers and parents have all had to take risks setting up new ways of learning, and in some cases that may have paid off, and in some cases it may have been less effective. But what I do hope going forwards is that we do not try to stop learning these new ways. We do not really limit ourselves with our current education system. We really need to rethink the changes we need to put in place now for us all to grow at these challenging times. With COVID-19, we hope for a cure sooner rather than later. And again, I admire and respect all those tireless hours scientists and frontline workers are putting their lives on the line every single day to carry out the research to enable that to happen. But what about a cure or a vaccine for our education pandemic? What can we do to stop this spread of learning penia, as I call it? Of course, education is complicated. There's not a single injection or a vaccine that's going to cure education pandemic now or even the future. But I believe there are changes now we can make at a country or government level or even at a school level. Firstly, I think we need to fix our education system today and provide new curriculum and systems that meet the needs of young people. One that's future ready. One that does not require this initiative overload. One that treats and shapes the future of lifelong learners. Secondly, we need to improve the blend and communication between schools and universities. We need to look at alternative pathways which are not heavily reliant on grades and examinations and draw upon a variety of different sources of evidence and portfolios which put well-being of students and happiness at the heart of decision making. Of course, subject knowledge is very important. I'm not saying it's not, but there's a place for it in education and careers. We need to focus on those skills I mentioned earlier and competencies that we all need right now and will need ever more so in the future. And what about the technology, you may ask? Technology will be the enabler and activator of these changes. It will enable new education systems and curriculum to develop more cost-effective and quality scalable solutions that focus on developing people and eradicating this education pandemic. Just like the ongoing pandemic, it's the people that's going to matter more than ever. It's the people at the heart of transformation in education. It's the people that do the transformation. And it'll be the people that matters in the future. So don't spend all of your budget on the technology, infrastructure and software and devices. Spend 70% of it on that, and then 30%, the remainder of your budget, maximising that 70% by spending it on the people. By the way, for effective change to really make a difference, 70% of your time should be spent on change management and people. So how can you help cure the education pandemic? What can you do now in your role, wherever you may work in education, whether you're a leader, you're a teacher, an educator in some form? I want to offer some tips going forward. My first tip is around knowing your audience. Let students take ownership of this, if possible. Let students make the choices. Try to meet your students on their turf, what they want to use, what they want to do. You facilitate that learning, but let them choose their tools. So that's my tip number one. Let's know our audience. Tip number two, always begin with the end in mind, as Covey said. Start with the pedagogy and backwards plan with any program, and always ask the question, does the technology improve the learning? If it does, use it. If it doesn't, then don't. Technology is going to amplify good teaching. It won't get rid of bad teaching. So always begin with the end in mind. Tip number three, start with the why. The future is going to value people with what they do, with what they know, not what they know. And by having a vision, people don't buy what you do, but they will buy why you do it. And that's at the core of what we're doing at New Nordic School. What's the core purpose of your school, your values, you? Are they the same? That really is starting with the why. How much technology you need to support that going forwards then really comes into play later on. So tip number 3, start with the why. Have a clear vision for your school, for your department, for your own personal goals, and how you're going to take that forward. Tip number 4, let's learn by failing. When was the last time you did something for the first time, for example? Yeah? So really, it's about encouraging this failure and learning through this failure and becoming a better person, educator, leader because of that. Tip number 4, let's learn by failing. Tip number 5, let's develop a growth mindset. You know, newborn babies are not born unmotivated. We all have the ability to develop a growth mindset. Develop a growth mindset in yourself, but if you're in a position of responsibility, recruit people with a growth mindset too. You'll find that actually those people actually will make more of a difference, particularly at this moment in time. Tip number 6, build a net of support. The most effective way to do this is by developing a coaching culture in your school. Put a proper structured coaching process in place. Our implementation of our system focuses on building capacity for a school to improve itself. Really put that at the heart of what you're doing. You know, let go of your ego so when you walk away, things carry on and you still see that positive change. When teachers fail, they need a net. You know, provide that net of support so somebody can be picked up again and they carry on. Finally, tip number 7, let's develop this risk-taking culture. You know, think about, for example, recruitment of teachers. Let's not recruit teachers to standards from 10, 15 years ago. Look at the essential qualities we want in teachers. Desire to make a difference to student learning, a commitment to professional learning, a belief in the abilities of colleagues, a risk taker, strong emotional intelligence. Look for those qualities and skills. Those same qualities and skills, by the way, we want in students. Recruit risk takers. I'm optimistic about the future, and leadership is about developing the future. And I think the future is shaped by people who are optimistic, who are tough-minded. So surround yourself with people who are that. The world's changing. Thank you for your time today in this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do contact me if you want any further information about New Nordic School or any views or any advice during this challenging time. I wish you well in the future. Thank you.